I'm quitting next week. You're going to pay our debts while I get reorganized. That was the message I received from my daughter-in-law, Clara, that Tuesday morning. No greeting, no explanation, just a command disguised as a heads up. I read each word, feeling the blood rush to my head. I took a deep breath. My fingers trembled over the keyboard. And then I wrote the only thing I should have said years ago. That's your problem. 3 words. Nothing more. I hit send, and without a second thought, opened my email and signed the contract for an overseas job starting the following Monday. The next day, my son, Michael, wrote, frantic. But it was too late. I had already made the only decision that would save me. Do you want to know what happened next? Hold on, because before we get there, you need to understand how I got to that point, how a mother becomes an ATM, how love turns into debt, and how silence, that damned complicit silence, almost killed me. I'm 66 years old. My house smells like fresh coffee from 6 in the morning and lavender candles I light to calm the anxiety no one sees. The walls are covered in photographs where everyone is smiling. Michael hugging Clara on a beach in Cancun that I paid for with my credit card. Clara, in her champagne-colored wedding dress, the most expensive one in the boutique, because according to her, you only get married once. Mother-in-law. There are pictures from birthdays, Thanksgiving dinners, Sundays with the football game on in the background and my food on the table. Everything looked perfect from the outside. But the truth is, every photo was an invoice. Every smile, a reminder of how much it cost me to buy it. I was Irene, the stable one, the one who solved everything, the one who never said no, the one who worked double shifts at the hospital so my son could have a better life than mine. And I succeeded. Michael graduated, got a good job, married Clara. I thought my job was done, that I could finally rest. But on his wedding day, while everyone was toasting, I was in the bathroom calculating how I was going to pay the next 6 months of the mortgage I had co-signed for their apartment. Because they needed a good start. Because Clara wanted a decent place. Because Michael looked at me with those eyes that always disarm me and said, "Mom, just this once. Just this once." That phrase became my sentence. I paid the down payment on the apartment. $10,000 that I took from my retirement savings. "We'll pay you back in 6 months. I promise," Michael said. 2 years passed. I never saw a cent. I covered 3 months of rent when Clara decided her job was toxic and quit without having another one lined up. Just until I find something better, mother-in-law. It took her 8 months. I paid for the car repair, the air conditioner, Clara's new laptop because the old one wasn't working for her projects. Projects I never saw, money that never returned. And every time I asked, every single time I hinted that I needed that money back, the answer was the same. "We're tight. Mom, give me a little more time." Time. As if time paid bills. As if my time was worthless. I started living paycheck to paycheck. I stopped buying clothes. I canceled my gym membership. I stopped going out with my friends because every coffee, every meal was money they might need. I became invisible, a shadow that worked, paid, and disappeared. And the worst part is, I normalized it. I thought that's what being a good mother was. I thought sacrificing myself until I disappeared was love. But that morning, when I saw Clara's message on my phone, something inside me fractured. It wasn't dramatic. There were no tears. Just a quiet click, like when a door closes and you know it will never open again. "I'm quitting next week. You're going to pay our debts while I get reorganized." She didn't even have the decency to ask. She just assumed. As if my entire life was a resource available whenever they needed it. I sat in the kitchen, phone in hand, feeling the exhaustion of years crash down on me all at once. The dirty mugs in the sink, the calendar on the wall, marking the days until my next payday, the electric bill on the table, my entire life reduced to surviving so others could live well. And then I saw it, the email. The one that had arrived 3 days earlier, the one I hadn't dared to open, an overseas job offer, a 6-month contract, good salary, housing included. It started in 1 week. I had applied for it months ago. In one of those moments of desperation where you look for an escape, even if you don't believe it exists. And there it was, the exit, real, concrete, waiting. I opened Clara's message again. I read each word, searching for something. Anything. A please. I know this is a lot to ask. A minimal trace of humanity. Nothing. Just the cold demand of someone who never had to fight for anything because someone else was always doing it for her. My fingers moved on their own. That's your problem. Send. And then I opened the job offer email. I read the terms one more time. I digitally signed. I accepted. I confirmed. In less than 5 minutes, my entire life changed direction. I didn't call Michael. I didn't explain anything. I just started packing. The silence after sending that message was deafening. I stared at the screen, waiting for the 3 dots to appear, indicating Clara was typing, waiting for the retaliation, the guilt trip, the drama. But nothing happened. She didn't even read it immediately, and that told me everything I needed to know. To her, I wasn't a person. I was a resource, one that was always available, one that never ran out, until that day. I got up from the chair, my knees weak, but my mind strangely clear. I went to my room and pulled the big suitcase out of the closet, the one I hadn't used in years because there was never time for vacations. There was never money for me. There was always an emergency more important than my rest. There was always someone who needed me more than I needed myself. I opened the closet and started pulling out clothes. Not many, just the essentials. Because for the first time in decades, I was choosing what was essential for me, not for someone else. Every piece of clothing I folded was a quiet act of rebellion. Every item I chose to take was a declaration. This is mine. My life is mine. My future is mine. I put my documents in a folder. Passport, birth certificate, property deeds, credit cards. Everything that made me legally exist. Everything that proved I was someone before I became the family bank. It was 11 in the morning when my phone started ringing. Michael. I didn't answer. He called again, and again, and again. 6 missed calls in 20 minutes. Then came the texts. Mom, call me. Mom, it's urgent. Mom, what did you say to Clara? And finally, Mom, we need to talk. Now, we need. That word made me laugh. A dry, bitter laugh that surprised me. Because it wasn't we need to talk, as in we need to solve this together. It was we need you to fix this. It was we need your money. It was we need you to go back to your usual place, quiet and obedient. I left the phone on the bed and kept packing. I packed my medications, my toothbrush, the photo of my parents that was always on my dresser, the one where they were still young and smiling with hope. I wondered what they would think of all this. If they'd be proud I was finally defending myself or disappointed I was abandoning my son. But then I remembered something my mother told me once, weeks before she died. Irene, don't let them love you only when they need something. That's not love. That's convenience. She was right. It took me 30 years to understand it, but she was right. The phone wouldn't stop vibrating. More messages. Now from Clara. Irene, I don't understand your attitude. Irene, I thought we could count on you. Irene, this is very selfish of you. Selfish. That word hit me like a slap. Me, who had emptied my accounts to fill theirs. Me, who worked sick so they wouldn't have to worry. Me, who canceled my life to be available when they needed me. Selfish. I picked up the phone and blocked Clara's number. There was no internal drama, no doubt. Just a click, and her name disappeared from my screen. I felt something heavy lift off my chest, as if I'd been carrying a backpack full of rocks for years and someone finally gave me permission to set it down. Michael kept calling. This time I answered. I needed to. I needed to hear his voice to confirm what I already knew. Mom? Finally. What the hell is going on? Clara is hysterical. She says you replied something awful to her and now you're not answering. What did you say to her? His voice wasn't worried about me. It sounded annoyed, frustrated, as if I had committed an unpardonable crime. I took a deep breath. I told her the truth, Michael, that her problems are her problems, not mine. Silence. A silence so long I thought the call had dropped. But then he spoke, his tone one of total disbelief. Are you kidding me? Mom, she's going through a tough time. Her job is stressing her out. She needs a break. I thought you'd understand. I understand perfectly, son. I understand she's been needing breaks for 3 years that I pay for. I understand that every time something gets hard, I am the solution. I understand that never, not once, have you two wondered if I also need a break. Mom, don't be dramatic. We've paid you back money. When, Michael? Tell me when. Give me one date. One amount. One single time in these 3 years that you've kept your promise. More silence. Because there was no answer. Because the truth is uncomfortable when it forces you to look in the mirror. Mom, this isn't fair. We're your family. Family is supposed to support each other. You're right. Supposed to. But support isn't a one-way street, son. And I've been walking alone on that street for years while you two drive by in a car. A car I paid for, by the way. I can't believe you're being like this. Clara was right. You've become selfish. That word again. Selfish. As if setting boundaries was a sin. As if saying no more was betrayal. I felt anger rise in my throat. Hot and liberating. You know what's selfish, Michael? Quitting your job with no plan and expecting someone else to pay for your consequences. Selfish is promising to pay back money and never doing it. Selfish is calling your mother only when you need something. So if anyone here is selfish, it's not me. Mom, wait. No, I've waited long enough. I waited for you to mature. I waited for you to become responsible. I waited for you to see me as something more than a bank account. I'm not waiting anymore. What does that mean? What are you going to do? I'm going to live, Michael. Something I haven't done in years. I'm going to work for myself. I'm going to save for myself. I'm going to exist for myself. And you two are going to have to learn to do the same. Work? Where? What are you talking about? I didn't answer him. I just hung up. And this time, when he called back, I didn't answer. I let the phone ring and ring until it gave up, until it understood that this time was different, that this time I wasn't going to give in. I finished packing as the sun began to set outside. The golden afternoon light streamed through the window, illuminating the open suitcase on my bed. My entire life fit into one suitcase. And that didn't make me sad. It made me feel free, because it meant I could leave. That I wasn't tied down, that there was still time to start over. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room, reviewing my bank accounts on the laptop. One by one, I started making changes. I canceled the additional credit card I had given Michael just for emergencies. Emergencies that included dinners at expensive restaurants and weekends at hotels. I removed my name as co-signer from their apartment. I called the bank and explained the situation. It was easier than I thought. Are you sure, ma'am? The representative asked. Completely, I replied, without hesitation. I changed the passwords on all my accounts. Every click was a lock. Every change was a boundary. Every decision was mine, and mine alone. At 3 a.m, my phone vibrated with a long text from Michael. I read the whole thing. It was a mix of pleading, anger, and manipulation. Mom, the accounts are in my name, but you're the co-signer. If you don't pay, they'll sue me. Is that what you want? To see your son in legal trouble? Clara is crying. She can't believe you'd do this to us. We thought we could always count on you. We were a family. Were. Past tense. As if my refusal had broken something sacred. But the truth is, the sacred thing broke long before, every time they saw me as a solution and not as a person. I didn't reply. I just opened my suitcase one more time and packed the last thing I was missing. My dignity. The dignity I had lost somewhere between the first loan and the 100th broken promise. I found it there, in that pre-dawn silence, in that decision not to answer. I found it in the simple act of choosing myself. On Monday, my new life would begin, and for the first time in years. I wasn't afraid. I was at peace. Friday dawned differently, not because the sun was shining brighter or because something magical had changed in the world. It was different because I was different. I woke up without that knot in my stomach that had been my companion every morning for years, without that anxiety that made me check my phone before even opening my eyes, waiting for the next plea for help, the next manufactured emergency, The next bill I would have to pay. I made myself coffee. Good coffee, the kind I'd stopped buying because it was too expensive and the money could be used for something more important. I sat on the patio and drank it slowly, feeling the steam warm my face as the morning sun painted the sky orange and pink, colors I had stopped noticing, beauty I had forgotten existed. Because when you live in survival mode, when every day is just about enduring until the next, you stop seeing, you stop feeling, you stop existing. But that morning, I existed, and it hurt. It hurt as much as it felt good. My phone had exploded during the night. 43 messages, 17 missed calls, all from Michael. Some from Clara from unknown numbers, since I had blocked hers. There was even one from Elena, my sister-in-law, Clara's sister. Irene, I don't know what happened between you, but Clara is a wreck. She says you turned your back on her when she needed you most. I thought you were better than that. Thought I was better than that. Better meant continuing to be a doormat. Better meant disappearing so others could shine. Better meant dying a little each day so they could live comfortably. If that was being better, then I preferred to be worse. I didn't answer any messages. I read them all one by one, like someone reading a book they already know the ending to. Pleas, accusations, emotional blackmail wrapped in pretty words. Mom, we need you. Mom, don't be cruel. Mom, think about us. Always us, never me. Never. How are you? Or what do you need? Or when was the last time someone asked if you were okay? Never. At 10 in the morning, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked out the window and my stomach tightened. Michael's car was parked outside. He and Clara were getting out, her eyes puffy, him with that expression I knew too well, determination mixed with frustration. They were coming to talk. They were coming to convince me. They were coming to get their source of income back. I didn't open the door. Michael knocked. Once. Twice. 3 times. Mom, I know you're in there. Your car is in the driveway. Please. Open up. We need to talk. That word again. Need. As if their needs were commands I had to obey. I stayed in the living room, still, feeling my heart beat in my ears. It wasn't fear. It was something deeper. It was the battle between the woman I had been for 66 years and the woman I was trying to become. Mom, open the damn door. Michael's voice sounded desperate now, almost hysterical. And part of me, that old conditioned part, wanted to open it, wanted to fix everything, wanted to make his suffering stop. But another part, a new fierce part, whispered, if you open that door, you'll never get out. If you give in now, you'll give in forever. I heard Clara sobbing on the other side. Irene, please. I know you're angry, but this is too much. Are you really going to destroy this family over pride? Think about Michael. Think about everything you've built together. Don't throw that away. Pride. As if defending my own life was vanity. As if refusing to continue being used was a whim. And that phrase, everything you've built together. Together? I built. I paid. I sustained. They just lived in the house my hands built. Mom, if you don't open up in 5 minutes, I'm going to think something happened to you and I'm calling the police. Michael's threat was hollow and we both knew it. But it served a purpose. It made me angry. It made me understand that even in this moment, even when I was setting a boundary for the first time in my life, he was still trying to control me, to force me, to break me. I walked to the door. I didn't open it. I just spoke, loud enough for them to hear. Michael, Clara, I hear you perfectly, but I'm not opening this door. Not because I'm angry, but because I've made my decision and nothing you say will change it. You need to leave. You need to solve your own problems. You need to grow up. Grow up? I'm 34 years old, Mom. I'm not a child. Michael's voice trembled with rage. Then stop acting like one. Stop running to me every time life gets hard. Stop expecting me to solve what you created. This isn't just mine. You co-signed. You said you'd support us. And I did. For 3 years, I did. But support doesn't mean eternal sacrifice, Michael. Support doesn't mean I cease to exist so you can exist. I'm not your co-signer anymore. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your safety net. You need to learn to swim on your own. Silence. And then Clara spoke. In a cold voice I had never heard from her. You know what? You were right, Michael. Your mom has changed. She's become selfish and bitter. She's probably just having some midlife crisis. Let's go. We're wasting our time here. Midlife crisis. As if waking up was a pathology. As if reclaiming my life was a symptom of madness. I heard them walk away. The car engines start. The tires screech on the pavement. And then, silence. A silence so absolute that for a moment, it scared me. Because for years, my value had been tied to how useful I was. And now, with no one needing me, who was I? I sat on the floor, my back against the door, and I cried. Not from sadness. Not from regret. I cried from relief. I cried because I had just survived the hardest test. I cried because I didn't give in. I cried because, for the first time, I chose my pain over their comfort. And that, I discovered, was revolutionary. The rest of the day, I finalized paperwork. I called my current job and submitted my official resignation. My boss, Dr. Martinez, was surprised. Irene, you're one of our best nurses. Are you sure? I explained I had accepted a temporary contract overseas, an opportunity I couldn't pass up. She understood. She wished me luck. I didn't tell her the rest. I didn't tell her I was saving myself. That I was running away so I could live. Some battles are too private to share. I went to the bank and closed the joint account I'd had with Michael since he was a teenager. For emergencies, I had told him when I opened it. Emergencies that had become his personal spending account. The teller had me sign several forms. Are you sure? Once it's closed, you can't get it back. Completely sure, I replied. And as I signed, I felt like every letter of my name was an act of reclamation. I was reclaiming my money, my effort, my future. I stopped by the notary and signed the documents removing me as co-signer from their apartment. The notary looked at me with something resembling pity. Family problems? He asked with false empathy. Family solutions? I corrected. He didn't understand. It didn't matter. I understood. That evening, I packed the last few things. Cold weather clothes, because it was cold where I was going. Comfortable shoes. Books I never had time to read. A new notebook where I would write everything I was feeling, everything I was discovering about myself. I looked at my house, this place that had been my refuge and my prison. The walls knew every tear, every sleepless night, every bill I paid at that table, every call where I said yes when I wanted to say no more. I had asked my friend Maria to look after the house while I was away. She was the only one I told everything to, the only one who didn't judge me, the only one who said, "It's about time, Irene. It's about time you lived for yourself." Maria would arrive on Sunday to get the keys. I would leave at dawn on Monday, 36 hours. That's all that stood between my old life and my new one. That night, before sleeping, I did something I hadn't done since I was a child. I prayed. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I didn't ask for everything to be okay. I just said thank you. Thank you for the courage. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for still being alive to start over. Saturday woke with a knot in my stomach that wasn't fear or regret. It was anticipation. That strange feeling of being on the verge of something huge, something irreversible, something that would change everything forever. I got ready slowly, as if every movement was a ritual. Coffee, shower, clean clothes. Each simple action felt significant because I knew it was one of the last times I would do it in this house as the woman I used to be. Maria arrived mid-morning with a bag of pastries and 2 coffees. We sat in the kitchen, that space where I had prepared 1,000 family dinners, where I had cried in silence while washing dishes, where I had calculated impossible budgets on stained napkins. She looked at me with that mix of pride and worry only true friends can have. "How are you feeling?" she asked, holding her mug with both hands. "Like I'm dying and being born at the same time," I replied with brutal honesty. She nodded. She didn't try to convince me everything would be fine. She didn't give me cheap motivational speeches. She just took my hand and said, "It's okay to feel both. It's okay for it to hurt. The pain means it was real, that you loved deeply. But it also means you're ready for something different. I showed her where the spare keys were, how the finicky water heater worked, which plants needed water every third day, domestic details that felt like goodbyes. And if Michael comes? She asked carefully. Tell him I'm not here. Tell him you don't know when I'll be back. Tell him whatever you want, but don't open the door for him. Maria promised she would be a fortress, that my house would be safe, that I would be safe. After she left, I stayed in the living room, looking at my phone. There were more messages, many more, but there was a new one that froze my blood. It wasn't from Michael or Clara. It was from my sister-in-law Elena again, but this time the tone was different. Irene, Michael told me what you did. You closed the accounts. You removed yourself as co-signer. You left them alone with all the debts. I can't believe you're so vindictive. Clara is devastated. She had an anxiety attack last night, and they had to take her to the emergency room. This is your fault. I hope you can live with that. My fault. Again. Always my fault. If I helped too much, I was enabling them. If I stopped helping, I was cruel. There was no way to win this game because the rules always change to keep me losing. I read the message 3 times, waiting to feel guilty, waiting for that old programming to make me run to the hospital. But it didn't happen. Instead, I felt something else, clean and clear. Anger. Clara had an anxiety attack. And I had lived with insomnia for 3 years. I had lived with tachycardia every time the phone rang. I had been forced to take blood pressure medication because my body couldn't handle the stress of holding up 3 lives. But that was never an emergency. That never warranted anyone running to save me. Because I was strong. I could handle it. I couldn't break. Because if I broke, everything would fall. Well, I had broken. And I discovered that when you break in the right way, you become something new, something stronger, something that no longer lets itself be stepped on. I didn't reply to Elena's message. Instead, I did something I had been putting off. I wrote a letter, not to send, just to get everything out, to give shape to this tornado of emotions that had consumed me for years. Michael, when you were born, I swore I would give you everything, and I did. I gave you education, opportunities, unconditional love. But at some point, I confused loving you with disappearing for you. I thought being a good mother meant having no boundaries. I thought loving you meant not loving myself. I was wrong. Love doesn't destroy. Love doesn't consume until there's nothing left. That's not love. It's misunderstood sacrifice. And I'm not going to sacrifice myself anymore. Not because I don't love you, but because I am finally loving myself. I hope one day you understand. I hope one day you thank me for teaching you that people are not infinite resources, that we all have a limit, and that it's okay to say, this far and no further. Your mother, Irene. I folded the letter and put it in my suitcase. Maybe one day I would send it, maybe never, but writing it was enough. It was like vomiting poison, like cleaning an infected wound. It hurt, but it was the pain of healing, not of destruction. The phone rang. Michael again. This time, I answered. I needed to do it one last time. I needed to close this chapter with my own words. Mom, thank God. Listen, Clara is really bad. We took her to the hospital last night. The doctors say it's severe stress. This has to matter to you. You can't just keep ignoring us like we're nothing. His voice sounded tired. Real. For the first time, it sounded like he was genuinely suffering. And part of me, that maternal part that never completely dies, wanted to give in, wanted to say, I'm on my way. But then I remembered something. I was in the hospital too, 2 years ago, with a hypertensive crisis so severe they thought it was a heart attack. Michael was on vacation with Clara at the beach. He didn't come. He called me from there, music and laughter in the background, and said, Mom, what a scare. But you're okay now, right? It's just that we already paid for the whole trip, and we can't cancel. I was alone in that hospital. Maria was the one who picked me up. Maria was the one who stayed with me. Michael, I'm sorry Clara is unwell. I truly am. But it's not my responsibility. Of course, it's your responsibility. This all started because you told her no. If you had just been reasonable, none of this would have happened. Reasonable. That keyword. Reasonable meant saying yes. Always. Do you know when I stopped being reasonable to you, son? When I started being reasonable with myself. When I decided that my life also mattered. When I understood that holding you both up couldn't mean letting myself go. This is ridiculous. You're my mother. A mother is supposed to always be there. You're right. A mother is always there. But where were you when I needed you? When was the last time you asked me how I was? When was the last time you offered me help without me having to beg for it? When was the last time you thought of me as anything other than a solution to your problems? Silence. Long. Heavy. And then, in a voice I had never heard from him, he said, "I can't believe you're abandoning us like this. Mom, we need you. I know, Michael. But I need me too. And for too long, you won that competition. Not anymore. What does that mean? Are you just going to disappear? Are you going to act like we don't exist? It means I'm going to live my life. It means I'm going to work for myself. It means that when you call me, if you call me, it will be because you want to talk to me, not because you need something from me. It means I'm not your plan B anymore. I'm not your safety net. I'm just Irene. And Irene deserves to exist, too. I don't understand anything you're saying. You talk as if we've been bad to you, as if we don't appreciate you. That's not fair. You're right about one thing. It's not fair. It wasn't fair to me. But I'm not looking for justice anymore. I'm just looking for peace. And I found it. It's in saying no. It's in leaving. It's in choosing myself for the first time in 66 years. Leaving? Where are you going? Nowhere you need to know. Nowhere you can find me until I'm ready to be found. Mom, wait. But I didn't wait. I hung up. And this time, I turned the phone off completely. Not blocked, not silenced, off. Because I needed total silence. I needed my head to stop hearing their voices. I needed space to hear my own. That afternoon, I walked around the neighborhood. I passed Mrs. Aurora's house, my lifelong neighbor. She was watering the plants in her yard. She saw me and smiled. "Irene, how strange to see you out on a Saturday. You're always so busy." "Not anymore," I replied. "I'm not going to be busy with things that aren't mine anymore." She tilted her head, confused, but didn't ask further. She just said, "I'm glad. You look tired lately." Too tired for someone who should be enjoying life. She was right. 66 years old, and I had never enjoyed anything. There was always something more important. Always someone more urgent. Always a reason to postpone myself. Well, there were no more reasons. No more excuses. No more later. There was only now. And now, I chose to live. Sunday dawned with a strange calm, like the stillness right before a storm or just after it passes. I was in the middle. The storm had been my entire previous life. What was coming was unknown. And for the first time, the unknown didn't terrify me. It called to me. I spent the morning checking every corner of the house, making sure everything was in order for Maria. I left written instructions in the kitchen. I paid 3 months of utilities in advance. I emptied the refrigerator of anything that could spoil. Each task was mechanical, automatic, but also symbolic. I was closing doors. I was saying goodbye to the version of me that had inhabited these spaces for decades. At noon, as I was folding the last of the clean towels, I heard a car pull up outside. My heart sped up. I looked out the window and saw something I didn't expect. It wasn't Michael. It was Eulalia, my younger sister. We didn't talk much. She lived her own busy life in another city, with her own problems, her own dramas. But there she was, getting out of her car with 2 bags of takeout food. I opened the door before she could knock. We looked at each other in silence for a moment. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying on the drive over. "Michael called me," she said finally. "He told me his version of everything." Then I called Maria, and she told me the truth. I came as soon as I could. I let her in. We put the food on the kitchen table. Tacos, rice, beans, everything we used to eat when we were girls and Mom would treat us on Sundays. We sat across from each other, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. We just ate, and in that shared silence, there was more understanding than in 1,000 conversations. Are you really leaving tomorrow? Eulalia asked, wiping her mouth with a napkin. Yes. Flight's at 6 in the morning. And Michael knows. He knows I'm leaving. He doesn't know where or for how long. And he won't know until I'm ready. Eulalia nodded slowly, processing. Then she said something I didn't expect. You should have done this years ago. I watched you disappear, little by little. I watched you become a shadow. I wanted to say something 1,000 times. But I thought it wasn't my place. I thought you knew what you were doing. But now I understand you didn't. No one taught you how to say no. Mom didn't know how. Grandma didn't know how. We all learned that love is measured by how much you empty yourself for others. Her words hit me with a truth so profound, I felt my eyes well up with tears. She was right. I came from generations of women who sacrificed themselves into non-existence. Women who believed their value was in how useful they were. Women who died having lived for everyone but themselves. And I was repeating the pattern, until now. I don't want my granddaughters to learn this, Eulalia said, her voice breaking. I don't want them to think that loving means erasing yourself. That's why, even though it hurts to see you go, I'm proud of you. You're breaking the curse, Irene. You're teaching them something no one taught us. We hugged. A long, tight hug that said everything words couldn't. When we pulled apart, she took something out of her purse. An envelope. Open this when you're on the plane, she said. It's just something I wrote last night, so you don't feel alone on the way. She stayed until dusk. We talked about everything and nothing. About our childhood, about Mom, about the mistakes we repeat without realizing it, about how hard it is to unlearn what you're taught from the cradle. And when she finally left, she hugged me again and whispered in my ear, "Fly high, sister, and don't look back until you're ready." That night, my last night in that house, I couldn't sleep. Not from anxiety, but from that strange energy that comes when you know your life is about to split in two. The before and the after. I stayed awake in the living room, with a cup of chamomile tea, looking at the photographs on the walls. So many frozen moments. So many smiles that cost tears no one saw. There was a photo of Michael at 5 years old, hugging me with that pure innocence only children have. I wondered at what point that boy, who loved me unconditionally, turned into the man who only called when he needed something. I wondered if it was my fault. For teaching him that I would always be available. For not teaching him that mothers have limits too. For raising a son who expected everything and knew how to give nothing. But then I remembered something my therapist told me. The one I saw for 6 months years ago when I thought I was going crazy. Irene, you cannot take responsibility for how other adults choose to behave. You did the best you could with what you knew. They now have to do the best they can with what they know. And if what they know isn't enough, that's their responsibility to learn, not yours to teach. I had been angry when she said it. I thought she was being too harsh. But now, sitting in that dark living room, I understood. Michael was 34. Clara was 31. They weren't children. They were adults who had chosen to depend on me because it was easier than growing up. And I had chosen to allow it because I thought that's what made me a good mother. But good mothers also teach their children to fly. And I had never let them fall long enough to learn how to use their wings. At 3 in the morning, my phone vibrated. I had turned it on to set the alarm for 4:30. It was a message from an unknown number. Irene, it's Clara. I know you blocked me, but I got another phone. I need you to talk to me. Please. I know we made mistakes. I know we pushed you too hard. But you can't just leave like this. You can't leave us in this situation. The debts are in Michael's name. If we don't pay, he's going to have legal problems. Is that really what you want for your son? Are you really going to let him get sued because you're mad at us? Please. Irene, just this one more time. I promise after this we will never ask you for anything again. I swear. I read the entire message. Every word was a perfectly designed manipulation. The guilt, the veiled threat, the false promise. Just this one more time. The same old phrase, the same lie wrapped in urgency, the same trap I had fallen into 100 times. But this time, something in me was different. This time, I read that message and I didn't feel panic. I felt clarity. Because I finally understood something fundamental. Their consequences were not my responsibility. Michael signed for those debts. Clara quit her job. They made adult decisions, and now they had to face adult results. And I was not going to rescue them from their own lives. I wrote a reply. Short, clear, final. Clara, I understand you're scared. I understand the situation is difficult. But you created this situation, not me. I just financed your decisions for too long. I won't do it anymore. There are solutions. Michael can work extra hours. You can find another job. You can sell things. You can get bank loans. You can do what millions of people do when they have debt. What you cannot do is keep expecting me to solve what you created. I wish you the best. But my answer is no, and it will remain no. Irene. I hit send. I blocked the number. I turned off the phone. And for the first time in 3 days, I felt something like complete peace. It wasn't happiness. Not yet. It wasn't euphoria. It was simply the absence of that suffocating weight I had carried for years. It was the silence after the constant noise. It was space to breathe. I got in the shower. I let the hot water run over me for long minutes. I cried in there, under the water, where no one could hear me. I cried for the woman I was, for all the lost years, for all the times I said yes when I wanted to scream no, for all the nights I fell asleep with my stomach tight with anxiety, for all the versions of me I had to kill to survive. I cried for them. I released them. I let them go down the drain with the water. When I got out, I looked at myself in the fogged-up mirror. I was 66 years old, wrinkles around my eyes, gray hair I no longer bothered to dye, tired skin, but my eyes had something new, something I hadn't seen in years. Determination, strength, life. I got dressed in comfortable clothes for the trip. Black pants, a gray blouse, a green sweater, because it was cold where I was going. Comfortable shoes, nothing fancy, nothing to impress anyone. Just functional clothes for a woman who was going to start over. The alarm went off at 4:30 in the morning, but I was already awake. I had spent the last hour sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at the closed suitcase by the door, feeling how every minute brought me closer to that point of no return. It wasn't fear I felt. It was something deeper. It was the awareness that in a few hours, the woman I had been my entire life would cease to exist. And the woman I would become was still a mystery. I made one last coffee in that kitchen I knew by heart. Every mug in its place. Every teaspoon exactly where it always was. There was order in that house, but it was an order built on internal chaos. It was external perfection hiding an internal collapse. I drank the coffee slowly, savoring each sip as if it were a farewell ritual. Because it was. At 5:15, the taxi I had ordered the night before arrived. The driver was an older man, the kind who has seen enough of life not to ask unnecessary questions. He helped me with my suitcase. I gave my house one last look. The lights were off. The curtains were drawn. Everything was silent. As if the house itself knew something was ending. As if it too needed to rest from everything it had witnessed within those walls. "To the airport?" the driver asked. "To the airport," I confirmed. And when the car pulled away, I didn't look back. Not because it was easy, but because I knew that if I looked, if I saw that house fading in the rearview mirror, I might falter, and I couldn't afford to falter. Not now. Not when I was so close to saving myself. The drive to the airport was silent. The city was still asleep. The streets were empty. The traffic lights changed for no one. Everything had that dreamlike quality that pre-dawn hours have, as if the world were on pause, and in a way, my world was on pause. I was in that liminal space between who I was and who I would be, between familiar pain and unknown freedom. We arrived at the airport at 5:40. I checked my bag. The counter agent smiled at me with that professional kindness of those who work in the early morning. "Business or pleasure?" she asked as she printed my boarding pass. I thought about it. It was neither. It was a trip of survival, a rescue mission, a journey of rebirth. Pleasure, I finally lied. Because if all went well, eventually it would be true. I went through security. I took off my shoes, my sweater, took out my laptop. The whole absurd theater of airport security. But when I finally passed through and put everything back on, I felt something change. Because on the other side of that checkpoint, I was no longer the same old Irene. I was a woman in transit, a woman with no fixed address, a free woman. I sat in the waiting area, in front of the boarding gate. There were 40 minutes until the flight. I took out my phone and turned it on one last time before I left. I had 27 new messages, all from the night, Michael, Clara from different numbers, Elena. There was even one from Clara's mother, a woman who had never said more than polite greetings to me at family gatherings. Irene, I don't know what's going on, but my daughter is suffering a great deal. I hope you will reconsider and remember that family is the most important thing. Family is the most important thing. That phrase they use as a weapon. That phrase that means, you don't matter, only we matter. That phrase that forces you to disappear so others can exist. I deleted the messages without reading them completely. They all said the same thing in different words. They all wanted the same thing. For me to return to my cage. To become useful again. To stop being human and go back to being a resource. Then I remembered the envelope Eulalia had given me. I took it out of my bag and opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter in her irregular but beautiful script. I began to read. Irene, my sister. As I write this, it's past midnight and I can't sleep thinking about you, about everything you carried alone, about everything you sacrificed, believing it was love. I want you to know something I never told you. I admire you. I always have. But I also pitied you, because I watched you fade. I watched your laugh become less frequent. I watched your eyes lose that sparkle they had when we were girls and dreamed of everything we would become. You became what everyone needed, and you stopped being what you wanted. And I didn't know how to help you because I was fighting my own battles. But now that you're leaving, now that you're finally choosing yourself, I want you to know that you're not alone. That even if you're miles away, my heart is with you. Fly, Irene. Fly as far as you need to. And if you ever doubt, if guilt ever whispers for you to come back, remember this. The best mother isn't the one who sacrifices herself to death. It's the one who teaches her children that we all deserve to live. With eternal love, your sister, Eulalia. The tears fell onto the paper before I could stop them. They weren't tears of sadness. They were of relief, of gratitude, of feeling seen for the first time in so long. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my wallet next to my passport. Those two things would be my talisman, my reminder of who I was and where I was going. The loudspeaker announced the pre-boarding for my flight. I stood up, my legs trembling, not from fear, but from that adrenaline that comes when you're about to jump into the void and you don't know if there's a safety net. But you jump anyway, because staying is a slow death. I got in line, passengers with carry-on bags, executives in perfect suits, families with half-asleep children, all with their own stories, all with their own reasons for being there at 6 a.m. And I was one of them. Just another woman catching a plane. No one knew that for me, this flight was an act of personal revolution. No one knew that every step toward that plane was a step away from a life that had nearly killed me. I handed over my boarding pass. The flight attendant smiled at me. "Welcome aboard, ma'am." I walked down the aisle looking for my seat. It was a window seat. I always asked for a window. I liked watching the world get smaller as the plane took off. I liked the perspective that altitude gave. How huge problems turned into insignificant dots when you saw them from above. I sat down and fastened my seatbelt. The plane filled up slowly. A young woman, maybe 30, sat next to me, with headphones and a laptop. She didn't look at me. We didn't speak. And I was grateful for that anonymity. Grateful to be invisible for the right reasons this time. When they closed the cabin doors, I felt something release in my chest, like a chain that had been tight for years and finally broke. I looked out the window. The sun was beginning to rise, tinting the sky with pinks and oranges. A new dawn, literally and metaphorically. The plane began to move, slowly at first, then faster. The airport lights blurred past. And then, that magical moment, the nose of the plane lifted. The wheels left the ground, and we were flying. I was flying, moving away, rising, breaking free. I looked down and saw the city shrinking. Somewhere in that maze of streets and buildings were Michael and Clara, probably still sleeping, probably not yet knowing that I was already gone, that I was already in the air, that I was already unreachable. I felt something strange in that moment. It wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't revenge. It was simply peace. The peace of knowing that I had finally chosen my life over their comfort. The plane climbed through a layer of clouds, and everything turned white for a moment. Pure white, clean, like a blank slate, like a new page. And when we came out on the other side, the sun was shining with an intensity that hurt the eyes but also healed something deep inside. Because that sun wasn't asking me for anything. It wasn't demanding anything from me. It was just there, shining, existing, needing no justification. I took out my phone and put it in airplane mode. That expression took on a new meaning. Airplane mode. A mode of being disconnected. A mode of being unreachable. A mode of simply being, without having to answer to anyone. I left it like that. And then, in a symbolic act that surprised me, I opened my settings and changed my emergency contact. I removed Michael's number. I put in Eulalia's. That small digital change represented something enormous. I no longer trusted my son to save me if something went wrong. He was no longer my safety net, because he never was. I was always his. The flight lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of being suspended between two worlds. Between the woman I left on the ground and the woman who would land on the other side. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I kept my eyes open, staring out the window at that infinite ocean of white clouds that looked like cotton stretched to the horizon. I wondered how many people had fled like this. How many mothers? How many wives? How many daughters had taken a plane to escape lives that were too small for them? How many had felt this strange mix of guilt and freedom that was eating at my chest? The flight attendant passed by offering drinks. I asked for water. Nothing else. My stomach was in knots, not from nerves, but because my whole body was still in survival mode, as if it couldn't believe I had really done it, that I had really left, that I had really chosen. Midway through the flight, the woman next to me took off her headphones and looked at me. "First time flying to this destination?" she asked with casual kindness. "Yes," I replied. "First time." She smiled. "You're going to love it. It's a perfect place to start over." She looked at me for a second longer than necessary, as if she could see right through me, as if she knew I wasn't on vacation. "Is it that obvious?" I asked with a sad smile. She laughed softly. "Let's just say I recognize the look. I ran away once, too, 5 years ago. Best decision of my life." She said nothing more. She put her headphones back on. But those words stayed with me for the rest of the flight. Best decision of my life. I hoped it would be for me, too. We landed at 1 in the afternoon, local time. When the wheels touched the ground, I felt my heart race. It was real. I was here, in another country, alone, thousands of miles from everything I knew. The idea terrified and thrilled me in equal parts. I got off the plane, following the river of passengers toward immigration. Everything was in English. The signs, the announcements, the voices over the loudspeaker. It was like being on another planet. And, in a way, I was. I passed immigration. The officer asked the purpose of my visit. "Work," I replied, showing my contract. He stamped my passport without further questions. I collected my suitcase. I walked through the automatic doors into the arrivals hall, and there, amid a sea of people with signs and hugs and welcomes, I felt completely alone. But it was a different kind of loneliness. It wasn't the loneliness of being surrounded by people who use you. It was the loneliness of being alone with myself. And I discovered that didn't scare me as much as I thought it would. There was a woman with a sign that said my name. Irene Castillo. She was from the company, the coordinator for the International Nurses Program. Her name was Margaret. She was about 50, with a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Welcome," she said, her accent thick. "Long trip, right? Let's get you to your apartment so you can rest." I thanked her, a lump in my throat. Kindness with no expectations. Help with no strings attached. It was something I had forgotten existed. The apartment was small but clean. A 3-story building in a quiet part of the city. A studio with an integrated kitchen, a full bath, a single bed, and a large window that overlooked a park. Margaret explained everything. How the heater worked, where the building's laundry room was, what days they picked up the trash, mundane details that felt monumental because they were mine. This space was mine. No one else had the keys. No one else would enter without permission. No one would look for me here to ask for money. When Margaret left, I locked the door and just stood in the middle of that empty space. The silence was absolute. No TV on, no phone ringing, no voice demanding attention. Just silence. And in that silence, I finally allowed myself to feel everything I had been holding back for days. I sat on the floor, my back against the wall, and I wept. I cried hard. I ugly cried. I cried out all those years of accumulated exhaustion, all those sleepless nights, all those moments where I wanted to scream but smiled instead. I cried them all out, without control, without shame, because there was no one there to judge me. I don't know how long I was like that. When the tears finally ran out, I felt strangely light, as if I had vomited something toxic that I'd been carrying inside for decades. I got up, washed my face in the bathroom, and started to unpack. Clothes in the small closet, toiletries in the medicine cabinet, documents in the nightstand drawer, each object finding its place in this new life. It was 4 p.m. when I finally turned on my phone. I had left it off since I boarded the plane. When the screen lit up, notifications began to flood in like an avalanche. 53 messages, 22 missed calls, 3 voicemails, all from the last 6 hours. All from Michael and Clara. All desperation. I read a few. Mom, where are you? You're not answering. Mom, I'm worried. Call me. Irene, Michael says you're not at your house. Where did you go? Mom, I went to your house. Maria told me you left, but she wouldn't tell me where. What is going on? Mom, this is ridiculous. Answer the phone. Irene, this isn't funny anymore. We need to talk now. And finally, the most recent one, from 20 minutes ago. Fine. I got the message. If you want to disappear and act like we don't exist, go ahead. But just so you know, when you want to come back, there might be nothing to come back to. This is your decision. You chose this. I read that last message 3 times. And instead of feeling panic or guilt, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Because that threat, that there might be nothing to come back to, was exactly what I needed to hear. It was the confirmation that I hadn't made a mistake. It was the final proof that to them, I was only valuable as a resource. And when the resource refuses, the resource is disposable. I wrote a reply. The last one I would write for a long time. Michael, I'm fine. I'm safe. I am exactly where I need to be. I'm not going to tell you where, because I need space. I need time. I need to live without feeling like I owe someone an explanation for every breath I take. It's not your fault things got to this point. It's the result of years of imbalance that we both allowed. Me, for not setting boundaries. You, for not respecting the few I set. But that's over. I love you. I will always love you. But that love can't cost me my life anymore. We'll talk when I'm ready. Not before. Take care. Your mom. I hit send. And then I did something radical. I deleted the messaging app. I deleted my email. I left only the call function. But I put the phone on permanent silent. I connected to the apartment's Wi-Fi and opened a new email account. One that only Eulalia and Maria would know. One where I could exist without being found. I went for a walk around the neighborhood. I needed air. I needed to see this place that would be my temporary home. The streets were clean and orderly. Trees everywhere, people walking dogs, kids on bikes. Everything had that slow pace of small cities where people don't live in a rush. I went into a grocery store. I bought the basics. Coffee, bread, eggs, milk, fruit. Simple things to last the week. I paid with my own card. Money I had earned, that I didn't owe to anyone, that I didn't have to justify. On the way back to the apartment, I ran into an older woman watering the plants in the front garden. She waved at me. "New neighbor," she exclaimed with a thick accent. "Welcome to the building. I'm Francisca. I live on the second floor. If you need anything, just knock." I thanked her. I introduced myself. We exchanged smiles, and I kept walking. But that small gesture, that welcome with no expectations, reminded me that a world existed where people could be kind without wanting something in return. That night, I made something simple for dinner: scrambled eggs and toast. I ate sitting on the small sofa, looking out the window. Outside, the park was lit with yellow lamps. Some people were strolling. Others were jogging. Others just sat on benches, staring into space. And I was one of them. A woman in an apartment. A woman eating scrambled eggs. A woman who, for the first time in years, didn't have to be watching her phone. My first day of work was Tuesday. I woke up at 5 in the morning with that mix of nerves and excitement I hadn't felt since I was young, and anything was possible. I got ready with care. Clean uniform, hair pulled back, comfortable shoes. I looked in the mirror and saw a different woman from the one I had left behind. The same tired eyes, the same wrinkles. But there was something different in my gaze. There was clarity, there was purpose, there was life. The hospital was a 20-minute bus ride away. I got on, following the directions Margaret had given me. Everything was new. The streets, the buildings, the language I heard around me. But instead of scaring me, that newness energized me. It was like being a tourist in my own life, like rediscovering what it felt like to be present in the moment, without the constant burden of the past. The hospital was modern and large. I was greeted by the head of nursing, a man named Michael, who spoke basic Spanish and treated me with that professional but genuine courtesy. He introduced me to the team. There were nurses of all ages and nationalities. One of them, Aurora, was Colombian and had been working there for 5 years. "You're going to like it here," she said as she showed me the area where we would work. "Here, they pay you what you're worth. They respect you. And when your shift ends, it ends. No one calls you afterward. No one expects you to live for the job. It's different. Different." That word became my mantra. Everything was different. And for the first time, different meant better. My shift was from 7 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. 6 days a week, with Sundays off. The work was similar to what I did back home. General care, administering medication, monitoring patients. But the atmosphere was completely different. There was structure. There were clear rules. There was respect among colleagues. No one yelled. No one blamed you for mistakes that weren't yours. No one expected you to do 3 jobs for the salary of 1. That first week passed in a blur of learning and adaptation. I learned the hospital's protocols, the names of my colleagues, the bus routes, where to buy food, where the nearest laundromat was, logistical details that kept me busy and stopped me from thinking too much about what I had left behind. Because when I did think, when I allowed myself to remember, guilt tried to seep in like smoke through the cracks of my new peace. I hadn't written to Michael again. He hadn't insisted anymore after that last threatening message. The silence between us was absolute. And that silence, I discovered, wasn't empty. It was space. Space for each of us to process. Space for him to face his consequences. Space for me to learn to exist without carrying his weight. But the nights were hard. When I got back to the apartment and closed the door, when the noise of the day died down and it was just me, that's where the real battle took place. I would sit on the sofa with a cup of tea and stare at the phone. I would check it compulsively, waiting for, I don't know what, a message of apology, a call where they finally understood, some sign that they missed me as a person and not just as a solution. But there was nothing, and that nothingness hurt in a strange way. It hurt because it confirmed what I had always suspected but never wanted to accept. When I stopped being useful, I stopped being necessary. On Friday of my first week, Aurora invited me for coffee after our shift. We went to a small cafe near the hospital. She ordered a cappuccino. I ordered an Americano. We sat by the window, and for a while, we just drank in comfortable silence. Then she spoke. "Are you running from something or to something?" she asked, with no preamble. The question hit me with its honesty. "A bit of both," I admitted, I ran from a family that was slowly killing me, and I came toward, I don't know, toward the possibility of finding myself. Aurora nodded as if she understood perfectly. I ran from a marriage, she confessed. 20 years married to a man who made me believe I was nothing without him. One day, I woke up and realized I had been his shadow for so long. I had forgotten what the light felt like. So I came here. No plan, no money, just pure courage. It was the most terrifying and the most liberating thing I've ever done. She stared into her cup. The first few months were awful. I cried every night. I felt guilty for leaving him. I felt selfish for choosing myself. But over time, the crying became less frequent. And one day, I realized a whole week had passed without me crying. And then a month. And then I couldn't remember the last time. That's what happens. The pain doesn't disappear all at once. It just gets smaller and smaller until one day you realize it doesn't control your life anymore. Her words stayed with me. They gave me hope that what I was feeling was normal, that it was okay to still be broken, that healing wasn't instantaneous. That freedom had an emotional cost that had to be paid in installments of nightly tears and morning doubts. On Saturday, my first day off, I decided to explore the city. I took the bus downtown. I walked through streets full of shops and restaurants. I went into a bookstore and stayed there for hours. I touched books. I read back covers. I bought 3 that called to me. Books about women reinventing themselves. Books about starting over. Books that spoke directly to me. I ate lunch alone at a small restaurant. I ordered pasta with tomato sauce. I drank wine. I allowed myself to enjoy the food without rushing, without having to serve anyone else, without having to clean up afterward, just eating, just being. In the Central Park, there was an artisan market. I walked among the stalls, looking at necklaces, paintings, ceramics. A woman was selling handmade aromatic candles. I went closer. "This one is lavender," she said, pointing to a purple candle. "It's for peace, to calm the mind." I bought 3, one for my apartment, one for Eulalia, one for Maria. Small gifts that were also messages. Thank you for holding me up when I decided to hold myself up. I returned to the apartment as the sun began to set. I lit one of the candles. The smell of lavender filled the small space. I sat on the sofa with one of the books I had bought and began to read. It was about a 50-year-old woman who, after a divorce, decided to travel alone for the first time. Every page was a mirror. Every paragraph described exactly what I was feeling. That fear mixed with euphoria, that guilt intertwined with relief, that feeling of falling and flying at the same time. That night, for the first time since I arrived, I turned my phone on completely. I had a message from Eulalia. "Sister, I hope you're well. You haven't written much, but I understand you need space. I just want you to know that Michael came looking for me. He wanted me to tell him where you are." I didn't tell him anything. He got angry. He said ugly things to me. But I stood firm. "Your secret is safe with me. Fly peacefully. I love you." I read the message, feeling my eyes fill with tears. My sister, my ally, my only real connection to the world I left behind. I replied to her, "Eulalia, thank you. You don't know how much it means to me that you're covering for me. I'm okay. Better than I've been in years. The work is good. The place is quiet. I am learning to be me again. It's weird. It's hard. But it's necessary. I love you. I'll send you something soon." I also had a message from Maria. "Friend, your house is fine. I'm watering the plants, collecting the mail." Michael came by 2 more times. The second time, he brought Clara. They knocked for 10 minutes. They yelled a bit. They left. I haven't heard from them since. I hope you're finding what you're looking for. I miss you, but I'm happy for you. I replied to both of them with gratitude. And then, on impulse, I opened a new note on my phone and started to write. Not for anyone else, just for me. A kind of journal. Day 10 away from home. Today, I felt almost happy. Almost because there are still moments where guilt bites me, where I think of Michael and wonder if he's okay, if he's learned anything, if he hates me. But then I remember why I left. I remember the sleepless nights, the bills I couldn't pay, the constant feeling of drowning, and then I know I did the right thing. I'm learning something important. You can love someone and still need to be far away from them. Love doesn't have to be sacrifice. Love doesn't have to hurt. Love doesn't have to cry. 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 It wasn't. There were nights when I woke up with my heart pounding, thinking about Michael. There were mornings when the guilt was so heavy, I almost called to apologize. Almost. But I didn't. Because I learned something fundamental. Guilt doesn't always mean you did something wrong. Sometimes it just means you did something different. Work became my anchor. Every shift at the hospital was a reminder that I had value beyond what I could give to others. My patients thanked me. My colleagues respected me. My boss congratulated me on my performance. And every word of recognition was like medicine for a wound I didn't know I had. The wound of never being good enough, of never being seen. Aurora became something like a friend. We had lunch together. We'd have coffee after our shifts. She told me stories of her reinvention. I told her fragments of my escape. Not everything. There were still parts too raw to share, but enough to feel less alone, to remember that I wasn't the only woman who had to save herself from her own family. In the 6th week, something changed. I was walking back from the grocery store when I realized I had gone the entire day without thinking about Michael. The entire day without compulsively checking my phone. The entire day, just living. And that realization stopped me in the middle of the street. I stood there, bags in hand, feeling something settle inside me. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was peace. And peace, I discovered, was enough for now. I started doing things, just because I wanted to. I bought flowers for my apartment. Yellow flowers that I put on the table and that made me smile every time I saw them. I signed up for a yoga class on Sundays. I met people. I exchanged smiles and good mornings with strangers who slowly became acquaintances. I built a small life. A life that wasn't spectacular or dramatic. It was just mine. Completely mine. Michael wrote to me one more time. It was in the 8th week. A long message that arrived at 2 a.m. his time, which meant he was probably drunk or desperate, or both. Mom, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you care. But I need to tell you. Clara left me. She says this is all my fault. That I should have set boundaries with her. That I used you. Maybe she was right. I don't know. I'm alone. The debts are still here. I had to sell the car. I'm looking for a second job. It's hard. Really hard. And the worst part is, I understand why you left. I understand that I failed you. That I saw you as an ATM and not as a person. I understand that I hurt you. I don't expect you to come back. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I finally get it. Too late, probably, but I get it. I read that message 5 times. I cried. Not from sadness. I cried because there was finally recognition, finally understanding. Finally my son saw me. I didn't reply right away. I let his words settle. I let my heart process. And 2 days later, I wrote back. Michael, thank you for that message. It means more than you know. I love you. I have always loved you. But that love almost killed me. Not because it was bad, but because it was unequal. I needed to leave to learn to love myself. And you needed me to leave to learn to stand on your own. I don't know when I'll be back. I don't know if I'll be back. But I know this distance is saving us both. Be strong. Learn. Grow. Your mom. There were no more messages after that. And that was okay, because some conversations don't need an immediate continuation. Some just need to exist as breaking points, as markers of before and after. Now, sitting in my small apartment with a cup of coffee and the window open, letting in the cold air of this December morning, I can say something I never thought I would. I'm okay. Not perfect, not completely healed, but okay. I have a job that gives me purpose. I have a space that is only mine. I have days where I don't think about the past. And I have something I haven't had in decades. Hope. Hope that life can still surprise me. That there is still time to be who I was always meant to be. That message I received 3 months ago ended everything. That I'm quitting next week, you're going to pay our debts while I get reorganized, was the final straw that broke a dam that had been cracking for years. My 3-word reply, "That's your problem," was the beginning of my liberation. And the contract I signed to work overseas was my ticket to a second chance. I don't know what will happen next. I don't know if Michael and I will rebuild something someday. I don't know if I'll return to my country or stay here. I have no certainties, but I have something better. I have choice. I have a voice. I have the ability to say no, and I discovered that simple ability to set a boundary without the world ending is the most powerful superpower that exists. To the women who read this, to those who hold entire families on their shoulders while drowning in silence, to those who believe loving means disappearing, I say this: it is not selfish to save yourself. It is not cruel to set boundaries. It is not betrayal to choose yourself. True love does not consume you until there is nothing left. True love allows you to exist. And if someone in your life only values you when you are useful, they don't love you, they use you. And it's okay to walk away from that. It's okay to fly. It's okay to start over. That message ended years of false peace. But it also started years of true peace. And I discovered that real peace is never loud. It doesn't come with applause or external validation. It comes in quiet mornings when you wake up and don't feel that weight on your chest. It comes in being able to take a deep breath without it hurting. It comes in looking in the mirror and recognizing the person you see. True peace is silent, and maybe that's why it took me so long to find it. Because I was looking for it in the noise, when it was always waiting in the silence.